So 1 John is a letter about how we can really know who Jesus is, and how we can really know that we do know Jesus for ourselves. The writer writes towards the end of the letter in chapter 5 and verse 13, "I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life." So how can we really know who Jesus is? Well, we know who Jesus is because John saw who he was. The writer of this letter, although he doesn't identify himself in the letter, is certainly John, the apostle. We know that because the style and the themes are so similar to the Gospel of John, written by the same apostle. Indeed, the opening of 1 John, you'll see, is very, very similar to the opening of the Gospel of John. And in addition to that, the early church were all in agreement that this was a letter written by John. And it was written by John to a group of churches in about AD 85 to 95, so about 50 years or so after Jesus had lived and died and risen again. And these churches were beginning to struggle because it seems that there were some teachers who'd been teaching them, and they'd left by the time John's writing, but their teaching, the effects of their teaching had lasted. And their teaching essentially was that if Jesus were really a man, fully human, then he couldn't really have been God. And if he really were God, then he couldn't really have been a man. And so John is writing to say, well, I saw Jesus. He was really a man. He can really identify with us. He can really represent us to God. But he also really was the Son of God. He was divine. He is divine. And so he is able to live that sinless life that we can't, die the death we deserve, so that he can give us the life that is his. So we know who Jesus is because John saw who Jesus was. And then secondly, we know that we really know Jesus, John says, if we seek to live like Jesus, if we seek to obey God as he did, if we seek to love other Christians as he does. We know Jesus if we seek to live like Jesus, and if we hold to the truth about Jesus, that here is the man who is also God. So personally speaking, I found this a really encouraging letter to work through and write studies on. Encouraging because in a world that says you can't really know who Jesus is or was, here is an eyewitness telling me, yes, Carl, you can know. You can know and be sure. But also a very challenging letter, simply to think through, where are the areas of my life where I'm not seeking to obey God as Jesus did? So it's led me to come back to Jesus and thank him for his forgiveness, but also ask him to work in me through his Spirit so that I would obey God as he did, so that I would love people as he does.